Yeah, okay, and over to you. Right,
Okay, good morning. And as always, thank you very much for inviting me. I think Stephen got the date wrong because he's not away, and what can we do? But it's nice to see everyone here, and I appreciate some people are at Shiva, missing a few friendly faces. What I want to say, I appreciate that some people wanted something a little bit more humorous than they might perhaps be getting from me, particularly at this time of year. But everything I'll be saying in Bezrat Hashem is in the zechus of the hostages who are still in captivity, and our thoughts are with them, with their families, with the soldiers who are serving in the IDF and with their families. And please God, we'll get good news from Israel soon. And those who are suffering or unwell will be able to recover fully, mentally and physically from what they've been going through. I was debating what I wanted to talk about today. Normally I would try and talk about the Parsha, but I thought I'd try and take a different journey today and just have a passing reference to the Parsha and talk about something that I think is pertinent to me and maybe relevant to a few other people. As some of you may know, I'm a chaplain rabbi at a number of hospitals, particularly Great Ormond Street Hospital. And as a result, I often get fairly interesting shilas, very challenging shilas, some of which I have to refer to the Beis Din, some of which I have to refer to Gedolim in Israel or America. But a question was asked to me on the 13th of Tammuz. I remember it very well. A young father whose child is in intensive care, coronary intensive care, and they had serious concerns about how this child would survive, what this child was going through. And the father came up to me and said, I've got a question for you. From man, Hasidic man, he said, my daughter's in intensive care. Do I need to fast on Sunday on Shiva Asar B'Tammuz? And I looked at him and I said, are you healthy? And he said, yeah, perfectly healthy. Baruch Hashem, there's nothing wrong with me. It's only my daughter. I'll be coming into hospital. Do I need to fast? What should I have said to him? What should my answer be to him?
Yes or no?
So which one would you go for? Which one do you go for? Yes or no? Yes. Well, I was looking at him and I was thinking, yes. And I thought then there is always a cop-out for Rabbonim. I said, do you have a Rov? He said, of course I've got a Rov. I said, why don't you ask your Rov? And if you can't get hold of your Rov, come back to me. And I walked away and I was thinking, like, what on earth has happened to this world that I've got someone on the outside, certainly seems to be a frum young man. We're talking about the beginning of the 3 weeks, significant period, and he's asking for tearing. What's gone wrong with the world? And I think, thinking back and reflecting on what he said to me afterwards, maybe I misunderstood what he said. Maybe I misunderstood what it was a simple question. I want to come on to that in a minute. But as I think about going into the 9 days in particular, when I was younger, we always used to go to different camps to try and find a way to eat meat during the 9 days. You've got to find an excuse. I remember the delight when my youngest grandson was born, that he was born, actually his birthday's coming up in a few days, his bris would be in the 9 days. Great, they can have meat. And everyone was excited. They can have meat. It doesn't actually affect me because I'm vegan. But it's a thing we always try and find a way out. And we find an excuse not to observe any of the rules of the 3 weeks. And I wanted to actually explore that, what we're doing and whether we're misunderstanding what we're doing. And maybe in a way, what this young man was saying to me was a message to me in a different way. The rabbis tell us that there are spiritual things that stand, as they say, the memore shel olam, at the heights of the world, but people don't appreciate them, and therefore they don't take advantage of them. And we're told, indeed from the Altar of Kelm, that these spiritual heights of the world refer not only to things, but times when people can actually go to incredible spiritual heights, but they don't take advantage of them. And there are times of the year when we seem to be able to achieve great spiritual heights. We know the Yomim Noraim are a time when we can achieve great spiritual heights. But the rabbis tell us that this time at the moment, the Bein Mitzarim, that these 3 weeks is one of those times when we can actually achieve spiritual heights. It's a time when we can actually get to grow. Rav Yisrael Salanta, famous Balmusa, said that we can actually grow on Tisha B'Av as much as we can on Yom Kippur. In fact, I'm actually misreading him. He said we can grow more on Tisha B'Av than we can on Yom Kippur. Because these days are days we should be using in a way to connect to Hashem, in a way we have no other opportunity. And it's something I think we miss. Tisha B'Av itself is coming up very rapidly. It's a time of mourning, we know that. But the rabbis tell us that anyone who mourns the Beit HaMikdash will merit witnessing its rejoicing. But the Meiri tells us, again, something interesting, that if we observe the laws of Tisha B'Av by rote, just automatically, without any form of introspection, without thinking about what we're doing and why we're doing it, then we won't see the rebuilding of the Beit HaMikdash. So we've got to somehow, in this time, these 3 weeks, and we're already a week into it, over a week into it, we've got to learn how to genuinely feel the sadness and the pain of the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. Rav Aaron Kotler, Zecher Tzadik Levrata, the Rosh Yeshiva of Lakewood Yeshiva, told us that the most important part of our mourning on Tisha B'Av and in this period is the pain we feel in our hearts. He said all the laws, absolutely every one of the laws that we have on Tisha B'Av and the 3 weeks, are intended to stir our souls, to make us feel the pain of the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash and the exile we're in. And he said, interestingly enough, that unfortunately, in our times, this part of the mourning, the pain in our hearts is lost. And he said that over 50 years ago. And I think even now, we've, to a certain extent, moved so far away from the pain and the destruction that we've forgotten what it is. I know people even asked the question when we recaptured Yerushalayim in 67. The question was, do we even need to keep Tisha B'Av anymore? Do we need to keep these 3 weeks anymore? We've got Jerusalem back. But that's missing the point. We haven't got back what we lost. So how can we manage to experience any pain in our hearts about the Churban if it's something that everyone tells us is very difficult? Why do we even attempt it? What are we trying to do? Now, going back to Rav Kotler, he said again something that I think is very interesting. He said the way we can experience the pain of the Churban, of the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash, is to begin to feel the pain by realizing that everything that happens to the Jewish people is a result of the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash, of the Churban. All the suffering that we have now and throughout the generations is a direct result of the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. We have gone through so many difficult situations over the years. We're still going through difficult times. And the Rosh Yeshiva tells us that those are a direct result of the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. All our suffering, everything we have, is a result of those events. There's a medrash, very interesting medrash, of the story of a woman who lived next door to Rabbi Gamliel. She lost a child. And night after night, Rabbi Gamliel heard her crying bitter tears over losing her child. And when he heard her, it reminded him of the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. It reminded him of the Churban. And he cried over the Churban until we're told his eyelashes fell out. Now, I think there's problems with this story. First of all, we know that tzaddikim, we know that rabbis have mourned the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash for generations. What was particularly important about Rabbi Gamliel at this time? And what was particularly important about him hearing the cries of his neighbor over losing her child to remind him about the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash? And then the other thing is, the Medrash tells us very clearly the woman was crying over a child. Rabbi Gamliel was crying over the Beit HaMikdash. How can we say he cried with her? He didn't. He was next door. He wasn't with her. They were crying about different things. But I think the answer is actually connected with what I've been saying. Rabbi Gamliel understood that everything that happens to the Jewish people is a result of the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. Rabbi Gamliel always cried over the destruction, but now he had another reason to cry over it. He understood that there's no such thing as an individual suffering. Every person's private suffering is actually connected to the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. So he was crying with her because he understood that her loss was a product of the Churban. And maybe that was the question the father was asking me before Shiva Asar B'Tammuz. Maybe he was saying, I'm in intensive care unit. I'm with my child. I'm crying with my child. I'm davening for my child to get better. That's part of the Churban. I know that my child is ill because of the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. Therefore, maybe he was saying to me, I'm crying already for the Churban. I'm crying for the result of the Churban. Do I actually need to fast, which is just one of the symbols of the destruction? Now, I know it is incredibly difficult for all of us to feel the pain of something that happened so many years ago. But if we think about it, if we think about the tragedies that the Jewish people have experienced and are experiencing, in our generation, there are so many things, both personal and communal tragedies, so many things we're experiencing. Maybe if we relate to these, it breaks our heart. We hear news from Israel. We hear stories. So many times I read Hespedim of soldiers who've lost their lives, and you have to cry. There's no way you could not cry of what these young people have done, the way they've given up their lives. And then, of course, we have to realize, like Rabbi Gamliel said, that it's connected to the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. Everything that we've gone through, it's not an isolated incident. It's a direct connection to the Churban. And if we internalize that message, if we actually can then feel the pain of the Churban, we're going some way to actually appreciating our loss. And I think there is so much we have to think about. We have to realize that the Churban, the destruction, did not end the suffering of the Jewish people. Everything we're going through now is connected. It's a result. We're told that each generation goes down in value, and it's because, in a way, we're not on the spiritual level that we should be to mourn for Jerusalem. But if we think about the tragedies we have encountered, think about tragedies we read about, to realize that the way we could get away from these tragedies is by building our connection to Hashem, building our connection to one another, feeling the pain of one another, feeling the joy of one another, joining in together as a community to be one, to be connected to each other and to Hashem. That way, we can start rebuilding the Beit HaMikdash. We can then start correcting what we've lost and moving back to something that we need to appreciate. And we're told that anyone who mourns the Beit HaMikdash will merit witnessing its rejoicing. If we get there in our hearts to realize what we've lost, to realize what we can achieve, then please God, this Tisha B'Av will be a day of rejoicing, a day of simcha, when we'll all be together in Yerushalayim, witnessing the rebuilt Beit HaMikdash, the return of the avodah of the Kohanim, and then we really will see what the world is like. We will have our jam today and our jam tomorrow. I wish you all a good week.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Has anyone got any comments or questions? Thank you very much. I will end the Zoom call. See you all next week on Zoom. Just to